Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, PBM, Customers Bank, Collins Building Services, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Marks Paneth, Capital One Bank. Additional funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from Amerant Bank, Bank of America, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott Inc., Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Catsimatidis Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Ocean First Bank, People's United Bank, RPW Group, TD Bank, and these friends. Bronx, New York, Herman Richter Junior High School, Monroe High School, Bing and Bing, World Book, Encyclopedia. These are just a couple of things involved with my guest today. CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, Knickerbocker Restaurant, PJ Clark. That's all stories about my friend Steve Siegel, Global Chairman of Global Brokerage at CBRE. Thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Michael. I always enjoy being with you.
So, Stephen, tell me about your parents in Altoona, Pennsylvania, I believe. So tell me a little bit about that and how they arrived in the Bronx.
My mother was actually born in Altoona, Pennsylvania. She was one of three sisters and a brother. Her mother died at the age of 26. My grandfather remarried, and she had three half-sisters, so 7 children altogether. My father went off to World War II. Before he left, my mother became pregnant, and she and her 2 sisters decided they would move to New York City, where my father was from. 2 sisters worked, and my mom was pregnant and kept the home and so on. And I guess it was about 18 months after I was born that my dad came home, and that we settled in the Bronx. I became very close to my 2 aunts, even as a little boy. And in fact, one of them had a baby 4 years later and named her Stephen, which was kind of unusual for a first cousin to have the same name and same spelling.
174th Street, is that where you lived?
174th Street and Vyse Avenue. Short walk to James Monroe High School and to Herman Ritter.
Now, it's very interesting, and we'll get to it in a second, that you were 15 and a half when you graduated high school, but part of it was due to asthma and part of it was due to the SP. So tell me about that.
Yes, when I was young, I had asthma, and at 3rd grade, I was put into what they call a special ed class, which were various kids with health problems and maybe some learning disabilities. And there were 6 rows, and each row represented a grade, and I was in the 3rd row. And halfway through the semester, I had finished the entire 3rd grade math books, history books, geography books, just reading ahead and working out the workbooks. And when I sat there doing nothing, the teacher said to me, "Why are you sitting there doing nothing?" I said, "Well, I finished everything." So they moved me over a row to the 4th grade, and nothing guaranteed, but they said if I finished everything in the 4th grade, then I could go into the 5th grade after that. So basically, I took the 3rd and 4th grades in 1 year. And then when I went to junior high school, as you put it, they made the SPs, which was special progress. And you took 7, 8, and 9 in 2 years. You didn't skip, you took all the work, but you accelerated your time doing the classwork.
So let's talk about some of the jobs that I alluded to the discussion before. You know, you had the World Book. You were giving out brochures on the World Book. You made egg creams at the candy store. Talk about those initial jobs as a youth.
Yeah, I got a job. I'm not even sure how I got it, delivering leaflets, not brochures, sticking them under doors when you could get into buildings without doormans or security guards. Or when I was 13, I went to work in a neighborhood, what we called them in those days, candy store. Today maybe it was a soda fountain. We had the stand outside with the newspapers, and I would put them together on the weekends. And there were so many newspapers back in those days. And I was promoted to the fountain, which was amazing. And I made egg creams and malteds and a variety of sundaes and washed dishes. And I still had to carry the bottles down, the full ones, and bring the empties up for the delivery guy to take, and still did the newspapers, but I was behind that soda fountain. So it was a big promotion. I worked there until I graduated high school, and then got a job in the city.
So let's talk. You graduated high school at 15 and a half, and who was Bing and Bing? I mean,
Bing, but surprisingly enough, Bing and Bing was a very prominent residential and hotel owner. The Bing family was very wealthy. In fact, there's one person of the Bing family left as a movie producer out west, Peter Bing. They owned the Dorset Hotel. They owned multiple buildings on Park Avenue, including 1000 Park Avenue, where Paul Newman and Joanne Crawford lived. Paul Newman was one of my idols as a kid, and I eventually got to meet him when he came to pay his rent one day. And he lived in apartment 9J at 1000 Park Avenue, and for a 9-room apartment, paid about $1,600 a month. So that probably would sell for $30 million today.
So at this time, you're working for Bing and Bing, and you start the day 8:30 to 1, and then you're at City College for the afternoon.
Yes, 137th and Convent Avenue.
So what happens later on? This little firm at that time, which was a small firm, Cushman Wakefield, had an opening in their accounting department?
Yeah, I went from the mailroom with my little gray jacket, delivering the mail around the office and picking up mail to be sent out. I was asked to transfer to the accounting department at Bing and Bing, which was basically debit and credit accounting. And I met a young man there by the name of John Begley. He left to go to Cushman Wakefield, and one day he called me up and said, "There's an opening in our accounting department here." Roughly a 30% increase from $54 a week to $70. It was a full-time job. I was 17 and I wanted to save for a car, so I interviewed for it. I got it. Similar job responsibility, but I had that extra $16 a week that I could put away for a car, which I did.
So how do you elevate to leave the accounting department to get involved with the brokerage business at 20?
After roughly 2 years in the accounting department, I was processing, among other things, broker commissions for billing and for payment. And so I saw a lot of what the brokers were doing on a financial basis. I was called in by the controller to tell me that they would like to pay for my continuing education if I majored in accounting, and I could be maybe controller someday. And at the risk of losing my job, I said, that's a generous, wonderful, wonderful offer, and I'm flattered, but I really, really don't want to be in accounting any longer. He said, "What do you want to do?" Instead of firing me, he respected my request or desire to go into brokerage, but not right away. And he said, "Go get your license and we'll put you in charge of the credit and collection department." It sounded like a big deal to me until I realized I was going after tenants who were in arrears and were kind of pretty nasty at times, but gave me a good indoctrination on canvassing. When you're calling somebody up to say, you're 3 months in arrears, I'd like to click, and the phone hangs up before you get the rest of the sentences out. But I have some great stories of those days. And when I was 20, I transferred into a listing desk, which by today's standards is market research. Everything was manual then. And I just did surveys for people, for the brokers, got familiar with the marketplace. And I was allowed to do a little brokerage if somebody wanted my help. And I did, and I made a commission, and it was $15.84. I still remember, it was my first commission check. I framed it, and I put it behind my little listing desk. And 2 months later, I had to break the frame because I needed the money. I cashed the check.
Here's the question. You're the Bronx boy who's working in Manhattan. What do you know about the New Jersey marketplace, the industrial marketplace in New Jersey?
When I actually transitioned into brokerage off the listing desk, because I told them I was going insane there and I needed to, I actually answered the phone. At one time, I used to answer, obviously, Steve Siegel, and one day I answered it square foot, because I used to say, like, a survey of X amount of square feet and so on. I got off the listing desk and went into brokerage. I had my salesman's license, and I ended up working under a broker, senior broker, who did work in the suburbs. He did work in Westchester, and he did some work in New Jersey. So I was kind of oriented to the suburban marketplace, and I would go out to New Jersey for a meeting, and I just could have 2 meetings at the most, and I'd have to come back to the office. So when I was, I guess, 24, 25-ish, I went into our then CEO and chairman, Leon Peters. I suggested that it would be a good idea to open an office in New Jersey because it was transitioning from an industrial state to somewhat aggressive office interests, both from New York out and from growth in the state. He said, go do a business plan. Let me see what you have in mind. So business plan, I mean, I did 4 pages, the rent, the number of brokers I wanted to hire, what I thought they would make, how much the admin would cost, and the bottom line. Gave that to him, and 2 weeks later, he called me in, threw it at me. I thought he was going to fire me, and he said, open the office. If you're unsuccessful, you won't work here ever again. And I opened that Jersey office for them in 1971. And it was exactly what I predicted, maybe totally by luck, but it became a very, very hot spot for office locations and expansions, and partial and full headquarters. And we were a big part of it because Cushman Wakefield was at that time the preeminent firm.
So what happens when you're 37 years of age? You get a phone call to come to the big office in Manhattan?
Yeah, by that time I was a regional director, and I had 8 cities under as my responsibility. Still working out of New Jersey, not a member of the board. And I got a call at that time, the Rockefellers owned us, and I got a call from the liaison from the Rockefellers that ran our company for them, not managed the day-to-day, but was the liaison to the Rockefellers from the CEO. Called me to have lunch, and I called over to my office in Manhattan, tried to get the then CEO on the phone, and what's going on? I've been called, and I couldn't get him on the phone. So I went to the lunch, and he said to me, Vincent J. Peters has resigned. I wasn't sure I should use his name. Resigned, and the board of directors and executive committee have appointed you president and CEO. I was like, okay. Here I was over in New Jersey. I figured I might have been the only guy who didn't bother anybody because I was over there. Anyway, it's fine. I'm going to go back to my office. I got to see what's going on there. He says, you don't want the job? I said, well, sure, I want the job, but I got to see what's going on. He said, yeah, 1 hour. And I went down there, and sure enough, Jim Peters, as he was known, did resign. Had done it before, and this time the Rockefellers would not accept his retraction. And I took over, and I was 37 years old, as you said.
So you're president, CEO, and member of the board of this company, Cushman Wakefield. You do that for a couple of years, and what happens? Somebody in New Jersey, an insurance company, says, Siegel, since you started the Cushman office over there, maybe you're going to get involved with development.
By that time, I transitioned out as president to chairman was my title I had, but I was basically doing deals. And Chubb Insurance was a national account of mine. Interface with the CFO on a regular basis. They had a development division called Bellmead Suburban Development, And I met with them several times. Their desire was to get into urban development, and basically offered me an opportunity I couldn't refuse. And it was the worst timing market-wise because the market basically had collapsed. It was a horrible recession starting in 90, 91, 92, just the exact time I joined them. I did build a beautiful building in Washington, D.C., a couple of buildings in New Jersey. I bought a 60-story building in Dallas, Interstate Bank building, or Fountain Place as it was known. We were off and running. The only problem was there were no tenants. We didn't have, again, the market research we have today, but the best analysis we had is 500 million square feet of vacant space was 500 million square feet of vacant space around the United States. So needless to say, these were not the best times to be developing buildings or buying them. So Chubb said we got to halt it. I suggested for a variety of reasons that we should be buying multifamily because the prices have collapsed there. And they told me it's impossible for them to sell me as a residential expert when they had convinced the board I was the commercial maven. So we worked out a separation agreement. They were beyond generous, and at that time, and for the 6 years prior, Ed Gordon had been recruiting.
So let's talk a little bit about Eddie, besides the recruiting. How'd you meet Eddie originally?
I was honored by the UJA, and Eddie, for whatever reason, decided he would like to give me the award. We only knew of each other as CEO, as you said at that time. And we became instant friends after that. We used to meet once a month.
At the 2nd Avenue Deli, if I remember correct? The original.
Yes, you remember correctly, on 10th Street. And we would sit down, and Eddie, we'd order 2 hot dogs and 1 corned beef sandwich to split. Eddie would tell the waitress, we're going to be here a while, but I'm a big tipper. And he wasn't. But we sat there for an hour and a half, and we talked about where the market was heading, what innovations we should be thinking about, the greater demands of tenants, et cetera, et cetera. He was in the Chrysler building in horrible space. I convinced him he had to move to change his image, but not with any idea of joining him. And, I knew he had a formula, a secret sauce. And the sauce was consulting. He was building a consulting group to expand the services that they would need to provide to tenants. He had that vision. And Cushman Wakefield didn't follow suit. So anyway, when Chubb ended, I felt I had an obligation to go back and talk to Cushman Wakefield first, because I had decided I'd go back into the brokerage world. They didn't come up with, it sounds egotistical, but it isn't meant that way, with an offer that I felt was representative of what I thought my worth might be. So I said, I'm going to be talking to Eddie. Called him. He was in my office in 15 minutes. Within an hour or less, we had a handshake. I joined him in February of 92.
So it was February of 92, you joined him. But you said that Eddie always liked to do everything by himself, but you wanted to have total latitude to do what you wanted to do.
One of the aspects of the contract was I was president and CEO, and I said it has to be the definition of CEO. I said, I'll never embarrass you. I'll share my thoughts with you. But when I make a decision, you cannot undermine me. If senior guy says he's out of his mind, I don't know why you're doing that. You need to be behind me every step of the way, or it's not going to work. He committed to that, and so help me God, he kept his word every minute of every decision. Agency grew, bringing back investment sales in the softest market there was for investment sales, and beginning to expand the company outside of New York, which is one of the things I told him I wanted to do. It was interesting. The first acquisition I made, I shook hands with a company in Philadelphia, came back to Eddie to tell him how excited I was, how much it cost, and he turned blue. He says, are you kidding me? Because he wrote all the checks himself. And he said, we got to do something. I said, yes, I need the capital to grow this company. I know we can make it something special. and tenant demands are going to be have a sole provider for their expansion. If we can't provide that, they're going to look elsewhere for the New York business. And we decided he said, we'll go out and sell the company, get the capital. And we, in 1996, had breakfast up at the then Sky Club at 200 Park, which doesn't exist anymore. And we shook hands with a gentleman by the name of Andrew Farkas at Sydney Financial Group and sold the company. And with that acquisition came the financial capital and the intellectual capital to fulfill my dream of expansion. And we did 44 acquisitions in 4 years and went from 150 million in revenue to 1.2 billion and had the basis of an international company.
But during this time, you also did a number of other things. I mean, you became chairman of global brokerage at CBRE, but let's talk about some of the other businesses that you had, okay? Let's talk about the Knickerbocker restaurant that you've been a partner for over 40 years.
44 years in this past April. I was 29, 30 years old, and I had a client who I represented, who I sold 200 acres to in Jackson, New Jersey for what was then called the
Great Adventure.
It was Great Adventure, and that ultimately sold to what's the Six Flags today, and it's still located there. He was sort of a Renaissance guy. He's a founder of Ticketron. He owned a chain of jewelry stores on the West Coast. He produced movies and Broadway plays, Silk Stocking, Any Wednesday. And he was a fascinating guy. And he one day called up and said, I found this place. I want to open a restaurant. Would you and then my then partner in brokerage be interested in investing? He went down. We looked at it. Corner of 9th and University. It had been a restaurant called State Casino. It was closed. He told us what he saw that restaurant would look like when we opened it, and it was brilliant. It was a taste of New York. Jazz Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, piano and bass. It was a wonderful idea, and frankly, it worked. Took 2 years for the restaurant to build up clientele and turn profitable, and it's been profitable every year since we closed during the pandemic. But the timing was good because the 40-year-old plus restaurant needed upgrades to the exhaust system to meet code and everything. We did all that during the pandemic, and we will reopen sometime in the next week to two with a new 10-year lease on top of the 2 we had remaining. So we'll have 12 years to go. And we'll see our 50th anniversary plus.
Let's talk a little bit about 2003, you, Andrew Goldberg, on a rainy day.
Andrew Goldberg and I worked together at CBRE. He was the most prominent retail broker in the company and probably in the city. It was pouring rain. He lived on 65th. I lived on 66th. I said, let me give you a ride home. On the way home, he told me that he and his brother Jeff Goldberg were doing small investments, multifamily. They built an 8-unit apartment building in Harlem. We were trying to buy some, small buildings, and we were always $1 late, a day too late, $1 short. And I said to him, would you like to go bigger? I believe I can raise money and add to our credibility. I met his brother the next day. The 3 of us shook hands, and 18 years later, we're still partners.
Let's talk quickly about, with 2 minutes left, about Wendy and the kids.
I'm married to an extraordinary woman. She's a recovering leukemia patient with a transplant, and unfortunately, you get a virus from that transplant, stem cell transplant, which began to attack her lungs. 6 months ago, she had a double lung transplant on top of the leukemia, and she's in the process of fighting that now, 6 months later. I have 4 children, 2 by a prior marriage, 2 sons. I have a son and a daughter with Wendy. I just had 2 grandchildren in 2020. We call it the year of the twos. And I have 2 grandchildren from my oldest son. So I have 21, 19, 1, and 5 months.
And you continue to keep busy. I mean, briefly, you still are the principal at PJ Clark's on 55th Street in downtown in the Brookfield place over there. You have Sarah Beth, and you're still involved with the multifamily business. And needless to say, you're one of the most active brokers in the city of New York.
Thank God.
If you ever ready, funny, don't stop.
Thank God. You know what? I love what I do, Michael. Love what I do, and that's the key. Good partners make for successful investments, and I love what I do.
And you've given back to many charitable endeavors, you know.
That's why I have to keep working.
That's what you said to me many years ago. All you want to do is to make more money so you can give away more to help the unfortunate.
I still feel the same way.
The last comment is your father made a comment about three things. What were the three things?
When I was 15 years old, leaving to work in the cities, I want you to remember something. I get a little emotional about this. He says you have three responsibilities: put a roof over your family's head, put food on the table, clothes on their backs. And if you have to work multiple jobs to do that, which he did, you just go do it.
I hope that you, Wendy, and the family does well. And thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity.